What if your world, your identity, and your daily choices are all part of a grand narrative you've been telling yourself? What if the very fabric of our lives is a story woven from threads of reality and illusion, of certainty and paradox? For centuries, the greatest thinkers in history have grappled with these questions, but their wisdom has often been confined to dense, academic texts. We're here to change that. We're here to unravel the profound, heartwarming, and sometimes unsettling ideas that shape our existence and make them accessible to everyone. Philosophy and psychology serve as tools for living a more intentional, aware, and fulfilling life, rather than just subjects to be studied in a classroom. Welcome to a journey into the uncharted territories of mind and heart. We're going to explore some of the most powerful thought experiments ever conceived, not as abstract puzzles, but as practical frameworks for understanding ourselves and the world around us. We'll look at the fundamental questions that lie beneath our most common experiences, from how we define who we are to why we put off what matters most. We'll ask what defines your identity amidst constant change. We will confront the intricate logic of everyday life and the surprising ways our minds can deceive us. And we'll dive deep into the age-old battle between free will and the forces that seem to push us in a single, predetermined direction. This isn't about giving you a single answer. It's about giving you a set of new questions. It's about peeling back the layers of your own beliefs and perceptions to reveal the astonishing complexity that lies beneath. Each section of this video will tackle a different concept, but they all share a common goal: to help you see your life through a new lens, one that is clearer, more compassionate, and more profound. By the end of this hour, you may not have all the answers, but you will have a renewed sense of wonder. You will understand why it's so important to question the things we take for granted, to understand the biases that shape our judgments, and to recognize the power of our own minds to create change. This is an invitation to not just listen, but to think. To not just watch, but to become a participant in the great philosophical conversation. So, are you ready to explore the unseen threads of your reality? Let's begin. The philosophy of self and identity. We begin our journey with a question that lies at the very heart of what it means to be human: what makes you, you? It seems like a simple enough question, doesn't it? Yet, when you start to really think about it, the answer becomes surprisingly elusive. To explore this, we turn to one of the oldest and most captivating thought experiments in philosophy. The ship of Theseus. The legend goes like this: Theseus, the mythical king of Athens, returned from his heroic exploits on a magnificent ship. To honor him, the Athenians preserved this ship in their harbor for centuries. But as time wore on, the wooden planks of the ship began to rot. One by one, they were replaced with new, fresh planks. Eventually, every single plank, every mast, every sail, every piece of the original ship was replaced. Now, here's the paradox: is it still the same ship of Theseus? And if so, why? If not, at what point did it cease to be the original ship? Was it after the first plank was replaced? The 10th? The last? This isn't just a quaint ancient puzzle. It's a profound metaphor for our own existence, a mirror reflecting the constant flux of our identity. Think about yourself. Are you the same person you were at age 5? At 15? Yesterday? Every 7 to 10 years, almost every cell in your body is replaced. The person who woke up this morning is physically different from the person who went to sleep last night, and radically different from the person you were a decade ago. Your beliefs change, your memories are reinterpreted, your experiences reshape your perspective. You learn new things, you forget old ones. You fall in and out of love, you succeed, you fail. Each moment and experience is like a plank being replaced in the ship of Theseus that is, you. So, if every physical component of your body changes, and every mental component, your memories, your beliefs, your personality, evolves, then what is it that constitutes your continuous self? What is the fundamental essence that defines your identity over time? Philosophers have offered various answers. Some argue for a physical continuity, suggesting that as long as there's a continuous line of physical replacement, it's the same entity. But this runs into trouble when you consider radical changes, like an accident that necessitates extensive prosthetic replacements. Are you still you if most of your body is artificial? Others propose psychological continuity, asserting that our identity is maintained through our memories, personality traits, and consciousness. As long as I remember being me from yesterday, then I am still the same person. But what about amnesia? What about significant personality changes due to trauma or growth? Do those wipe away your identity? Furthermore, our memories are notoriously unreliable, often reconstructed rather than perfectly recalled. Are we truly the sum of our often faulty recollections? Consider the modern context. We create digital identities, online profiles, social media personas. Are these extensions of our true self? If you delete all your old posts and reinvent your online presence, are you still the same digital entity? What about artificial intelligence that learns and evolves, eventually having no original code left? When does it become itself? This thought experiment nudges us towards a more fluid understanding of identity. Perhaps self isn't a fixed, unchanging core, but rather a continuous process, a narrative we tell ourselves and others. It's not a single plank, but the ongoing process of building and rebuilding the ship. The ship of Theseus doesn't exist as a static object, but as a journey, a continuous becoming. This idea can be incredibly liberating. If your identity isn't fixed, then you are not bound by who you were yesterday, or even 5 minutes ago. You have the power to consciously replace the rotten planks of old habits, limiting beliefs, or past mistakes with fresh timbers of new aspirations, learned wisdom, and intentional choices. You can actively shape the ship you are becoming. This is not to say that the past is irrelevant, but rather that it is a foundation, not a cage. Think of an old photo of yourself. You instantly recognize the person, yet you know you've changed immensely. Both are true. The essence of you persists not as an unchanging particle, but as a living, breathing story that unfolds with every new moment. The ship might look different, its planks might be new, but the voyage continues, steered by the same spirit. So, the next time you find yourself grappling with change, or questioning who you are, remember the ship of Theseus. It's a reminder that identity is not a destination, but a beautiful, ongoing voyage. And in that continuous unfolding, there lies immense power and potential for self-reinvention. The logic of ambiguity and perception. Let's now turn our attention to the way we categorize and make sense of the world, a process that seems so straightforward until you realize its hidden complexities. We are constantly drawing lines in the sand, both literally and figuratively, to define our reality. But what if that line is blurred? This brings us to a mind-bending ancient puzzle known as the paradox of the Sorites. The word Sorites comes from the Greek word soros, meaning heap. The paradox is simple, but its implications are vast. It goes like this: you have a grain of sand. Is it a heap? Of course not. Now, you add another grain. Still not a heap. You keep adding grains, one by one. At what exact point does a non-heap of sand become a heap? Is it 100 grains? 1,000? 10,000? There is no clear, definitive line. The paradox reveals a fundamental problem with how we use language and how we perceive the world. Many of our everyday concepts are vague, yet we treat them as if they are absolute. This isn't just about sand, it's about our entire experience. Think about our perception of time. When does a person go from young to old? When does a small collection of plants become a forest? When does a drizzle turn into a storm? There is no universal agreement. These are not objective, measurable thresholds. They are subjective, socially constructed lines we draw to make our world more manageable. This paradox has profound real-world consequences, particularly in law, ethics, and our relationships. For example, when does an act of harassment become a hostile work environment? When does a repeated small lie become a deception? The law often has to define these terms, but the definitions are arbitrary and can be challenged. In our personal lives, the Sorites paradox is everywhere. When does a disagreement with your partner become a problem? When does a habit of checking your phone become an addiction? We often don't notice the subtle shift until it has already become a significant issue. This is why we can suddenly feel overwhelmed by something that has been building slowly over time. The heap has already formed, but we were so focused on the individual grains we didn't see the pile. The paradox challenges us to reconsider our need for black and white thinking. We are often uncomfortable with ambiguity. We want to know, definitively, whether a person is a friend or an acquaintance, a statement is true or false, a behavior is good or bad. But reality is far more nuanced. Embracing the Sorites paradox means embracing shades of gray. It means understanding that the journey from one state to another is often gradual, imperceptible. It reminds us that labels are often a form of shorthand, not a perfect representation of reality. This understanding can foster a greater sense of patience and empathy, both for ourselves and others. It allows us to be more flexible in our judgments and more compassionate in our relationships, recognizing that people and situations are constantly in a state of becoming. Instead of asking, when did this become a problem, it's more productive to ask, what are the small, incremental changes that have led to this point? Rather than seeking a sudden epiphany, we can cultivate an appreciation for the process of change itself. The paradox of the Sorites isn't a problem to be solved, but a fundamental aspect of reality to be understood and accepted. It's a reminder that sometimes the deepest truths are found in the spaces between our definitions. This journey from a single grain to a heap teaches us that the most significant transformations in our lives are often composed of countless tiny, almost invisible steps. And by understanding this, we can become more mindful of the small changes that accumulate to create our reality. The illusions of our mind. Now that we've contemplated the nature of the self and the vagueness of our world, let's explore the greatest illusion of all, the one our own minds create. Our brains are not merely passive recipients of reality, they actively construct it, often resulting in spectacular errors. In this section, we'll dive into a handful of psychological and philosophical concepts that expose the surprising ways our minds can deceive us, often without us even realizing it. The Dunning-Kruger effect. From the philosophical illusions of perception, we shift to a psychological quirk that affects us all, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Named after psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, this cognitive bias describes a phenomenon where people with low ability in a particular area tend to dramatically overestimate their own competence. Conversely, highly competent people tend to underestimate their abilities, assuming that a task that is easy for them must be easy for everyone else. This isn't just a simple lack of self-awareness, it's a profound and paradoxical illusion that prevents us from learning and growing. The less you know about a subject, the harder it is to even recognize what you don't know. This lack of metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking, creates a blind spot. A beginner chess player, for instance, might learn the basic moves and win a few games against other novices. They might feel they are quite good, completely unaware of the vast, intricate strategies, opening theories, and endgame tactics that a grandmaster employs. Their limited knowledge prevents them from even seeing the full scope of their own ignorance. This effect isn't confined to a chessboard. You can see it in a new hire at a company who, after a month, confidently proposes radical changes to a system they don't yet fully understand. You see it in the student who studies for 2 hours and feels they have mastered a subject, only to fail the exam. Or you see it in the amateur baker who, after making a few successful cupcakes, believes they could open a professional bakery. The peak of this overconfidence is often referred to as Mount Stupid on internet charts, a visual representation of the initial spike in perceived competence that quickly crashes as a person gains more real knowledge and begins to understand the true complexity of a subject. The Dunning-Kruger effect teaches us a crucial lesson: intellectual humility is the first step toward true knowledge. The wisest person is not the one who knows everything, but the one who is acutely aware of how much they still have to learn. It's a beautiful paradox: the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. This is a call to be more compassionate with those who are overconfident in their ignorance and, more importantly, to constantly check our own assumptions and biases. When we feel a surge of certainty about our own knowledge, it may be a sign to pause and ask, what am I missing here? The placebo effect. Next, let's explore an illusion that has a very real, tangible impact, the placebo effect. This phenomenon is a powerful testament to the mind's ability to influence the body. The placebo effect is the psychological and physiological benefit we can receive from a treatment that has no active properties, simply because we believe it will work. A patient is given a sugar pill for pain, but because they believe it's a powerful painkiller, their brain releases endorphins, the body's natural painkillers, and their pain genuinely subsides. This is not a figment of their imagination, it is a genuine, measurable change. The placebo effect is so powerful that it is a fundamental part of modern medicine and clinical trials. For a new drug to be approved, it must perform significantly better than a placebo, proving that its effects are due to its active ingredients, not just the patient's belief. In some cases, the placebo effect can be so strong that it matches the effects of a real drug. This isn't just about pain relief. Studies have shown that placebos can improve symptoms of depression, anxiety, and even Parkinson's disease. This is the mind's inner pharmacy, activated by belief, expectation, and hope. But this power isn't limited to medicine. The placebo effect shows us that our expectations and beliefs can fundamentally alter our experience of reality. If you believe a task is impossible, you will struggle, even if you have the skills. You may subconsciously not try as hard, or your stress response may shut down your creative thinking. This is the nocebo effect, the negative counterpart of the placebo effect, where negative expectations lead to negative outcomes. A person who believes a food will make them sick might experience nausea, even if the food is perfectly fine. In essence, the placebo and nocebo effects are a window into the power of self-fulfilling prophecies. They prove that the stories we tell ourselves about our abilities, our worth, and our potential can either be a potent medicine or a slow-acting poison. The narrative we construct in our minds has a physical and emotional reality. This is a powerful reminder that our mindset isn't just a fluffy concept, it is a tool that can be wielded for profound change. Rejection sensitivity. Now, let's talk about a deeply personal and often painful illusion, rejection sensitivity. This psychological trait describes the tendency to anxiously expect, readily perceive, and overreact to the possibility of social rejection. If you have rejection sensitivity, a simple "no" from a friend might feel like a crushing blow, or a delayed text response might be interpreted as a sign that you've been forgotten. You're not just feeling hurt, you're seeing a shadow of rejection that may not even be there. This sensitivity often stems from past experiences of rejection or from a fragile sense of self-worth. It can originate from childhood, where a person's need for love or approval was consistently denied, or from a series of painful breakups or friendships that ended abruptly. The mind, in its attempt to protect itself from future pain, creates an illusion of perpetual threat. It constantly scans for signs of dislike or disapproval, turning minor social cues into major red flags. A friend who is late to lunch might be punishing you. A boss who sends a brief, to the point email is angry. A casual acquaintance who doesn't respond to your greeting is ignoring you. This illusion, however, often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, as the person's overreaction to perceived rejection can inadvertently push others away. They might become overly clingy, defensive, or withdrawn, creating the very outcome they fear. The key to overcoming this is to recognize the illusion. To understand that the fear of rejection is a shadow, not a reality, and that your worth is not dependent on the approval of others. By working on a compassionate and secure relationship with yourself, you can begin to loosen the chains of this illusion and see the world as it truly is, rather than a place filled with potential rejection. This involves several steps: challenging the narrative. When you feel the sting of rejection, pause and ask, is there another explanation for this? What's the most likely reason my friend didn't respond immediately? Building self-worth from within. The stronger your sense of self-worth, the less you will rely on external validation. This can be built through practicing self-compassion, celebrating small wins, and focusing on your own values rather than the opinions of others. Taking small risks. The only way to prove to your brain that its fears are an illusion is by taking small, controlled risks. Send that text, invite that person to lunch, and see what happens. When the negative outcome you fear doesn't materialize, you begin to rewrite the script in your mind. The false consensus effect. Next, let's turn to a subtle but powerful illusion that distorts our view of the social world, the false consensus effect. This cognitive bias describes our tendency to overestimate the extent to which other people share our beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. In short, we assume that everyone thinks like we do. If we have a certain opinion, we mistakenly believe it's the most common and rational viewpoint. This is an illusion of normalcy, making our own perspective seem like the default setting for the entire world. This bias is a powerful shortcut for our brains. Instead of doing the hard work of gathering information about what others really think, we simply project our own internal state onto them. For example, if you love a certain movie, you might be genuinely shocked to discover that many of your friends disliked it. You might think, how could they not see how great it was? Your brain, operating under the false consensus effect, had already filled in the blanks and assumed they would agree with you. Similarly, if you are a fan of a particular sports team, you might assume that most people in your city share your allegiance, even if the data shows otherwise. The danger of this illusion is that it can lead to a lack of empathy and understanding. When someone disagrees with us, we might not see them as having a different, valid perspective. Instead, we might view them as irrational, misinformed, or even deliberately contrary. It can lead to polarization and conflict, as we become so entrenched in our own viewpoint that we can't fathom a different way of seeing the world. The false consensus effect is why political echo chambers are so powerful and why we're so often surprised by election results. It's the voice in our head that says, everyone knows this is right, even when it's not. To combat this illusion, we must actively seek out different perspectives. We have to be willing to engage with people who hold different beliefs, not with the intention of changing their minds, but with the genuine goal of understanding their point of view. It requires the humility to accept that our personal reality is not the universal reality. The next time you find yourself thinking, everyone knows that, take a moment to pause and ask, what if they don't? And why not? Confirmation bias. Finally, let's explore one of the most insidious and pervasive illusions of all, confirmation bias. This cognitive bias describes our natural tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember information in a way that confirms our pre-existing beliefs or hypotheses. We are not objective, truth-seeking machines. We are storytellers, and our brains are constantly looking for data that supports the narrative we've already written. Think of it like being a lawyer who has already decided on a verdict. You're not looking at all the evidence with an open mind. Instead, you're only looking for evidence that proves your client's guilt or innocence. If you believe a certain stock will do well, you will seek out news articles and analyst reports that praise the company, while unconsciously dismissing or downplaying any negative information. If you believe a person is a certain way, you will notice and remember behaviors that fit your theory and ignore those that contradict it. The illusion of confirmation bias is that it makes us feel smart and well-informed, when in fact, it's just reinforcing our prejudices. It creates an echo chamber within our own minds, making it nearly impossible to change our minds even when presented with compelling evidence. This is why it's so difficult to have a productive conversation about politics, religion, or any deeply held belief. We aren't engaging with the other person's arguments, we are simply filtering their words through our own bias, only hearing the parts that confirm our existing narrative. To overcome confirmation bias, we must consciously adopt the mindset of a scientist, not a lawyer. A good scientist actively tries to disprove their own hypothesis. They don't just look for data that supports their theory, they actively search for data that might contradict it. This is a difficult but essential practice. The next time you are researching a topic, try to find the most credible arguments from the opposing side. Try to understand their reasoning. This practice doesn't mean you have to change your mind, but it does mean you will have a more nuanced, well-rounded, and truthful understanding of the issue. The sunk cost fallacy. Let's now consider a powerful economic and psychological illusion that holds us captive, the sunk cost fallacy. This bias is our irrational and often unconscious tendency to continue with an endeavor simply because we have already invested a significant amount of time, money, or effort into it. The illusion lies in our mistaking a past, unrecoverable loss, the sunk cost, for a valid reason to continue a losing course of action. The truly rational choice would be to evaluate the future potential of a situation based solely on its own merits, but instead, we are held captive by the ghosts of our past investments. The classic, and perhaps most relatable, example is staying in a terrible movie you've already paid for, thinking, I've already spent $10, I might as well get my money's worth. But the $10 is a sunk cost, it is gone forever. The rational choice is to cut your losses and leave to do something more enjoyable with your time. The irrational choice, driven by the sunk cost fallacy, is to waste 2 more hours of your life in a state of boredom or frustration. This fallacy applies to countless, and often far more serious, situations in our lives. Consider a business owner who continues to pour money into a failing venture, not because the business model is sound, but because they have already invested their life savings. Or an individual who stays in a job they hate for years because they have already invested so much time and effort into their career path, feeling it would be a waste to start over. It also plagues personal relationships, leading people to stay in unhappy or unhealthy partnerships because they've already wasted so many years together. The fear is that if we walk away, all our past efforts were for nothing. The sunk cost fallacy is a powerful illusion because it appeals to our deep-seated desire for consistency and our aversion to admitting a mistake. We fear that walking away means we failed, that our past efforts were for nothing. But in reality, the most successful people are those who are willing to cut their losses and pivot when a strategy is no longer working. They understand that past behavior does not have to dictate future action. Recognizing this illusion allows us to make decisions based on what is best for us now and in the future, rather than being held captive by the ghosts of our past investments. The halo effect. Let's explore another social illusion that shortcuts our judgment, the halo effect. This cognitive bias describes our tendency to allow one positive trait of a person, brand, or product to influence our overall, often exaggerated, positive perception of them. It's the illusion that if a person is attractive, they must also be intelligent, kind, and trustworthy. We see a single, shining quality, and our mind casts a metaphorical halo around them, causing us to view everything else they do through that same positive light. The term was coined by psychologist Edward Thorndike in 1920. He conducted a study with military officers, asking them to rate their subordinates on a variety of traits, from intelligence to leadership to physical appearance. He discovered that a positive rating in one area, such as physical attractiveness, would often correlate with high ratings in other, completely unrelated areas like intelligence and leadership. The officers were not judging each trait independently, they were allowing one positive impression to color all their other judgments. The reverse is also powerfully at play, known as the horn effect. This is when one negative trait causes us to see everything about a person as negative. For example, if a job applicant arrives a few minutes late to an interview, we might unconsciously assume they are also lazy, disorganized, and untrustworthy. That one negative observation becomes a horn that taints our entire perception of them. The halo effect is a powerful illusion because it saves our brains from having to do the hard, continuous work of evaluating every trait and behavior individually. It's a mental shortcut. But in doing so, it can lead to deeply flawed and unfair assessments of both people and products. It's why attractive people tend to get a pass on certain behaviors, and why a well-designed product from a trusted brand, like Apple, is often assumed to be superior in every way, even if its technical specifications are not. Recognizing this illusion is key to making more rational judgments about people. It means we have to consciously separate a person's individual traits from our overall impression, and be willing to see the full, complex picture, with both their strengths and their weaknesses. The fundamental attribution error. From the personal, let's move to the interpersonal, the fundamental attribution error. This is a powerful social illusion that distorts how we view the behavior of others, and in doing so, it can lead to a profound lack of empathy. The error is our tendency to attribute other people's actions to their character or personality, while underestimating the powerful influence of situational factors. For example, if someone cuts us off in traffic, we instantly jump to a character-based conclusion: that person is an aggressive, selfish jerk. We are attributing their behavior to a fundamental flaw in their personality. We don't stop to consider the situational factors that might be at play. Perhaps they are rushing to the hospital, have a sick child in the back seat, or they simply didn't see us in their blind spot. Yet, when we make a mistake, we are quick to attribute our own behavior to the situation. If we are late for a meeting, it's not because we are lazy, it's because of the unexpected traffic jam or the broken alarm clock. We give ourselves a pass, but we don't extend that same grace to others. The fundamental attribution error is a powerful illusion that creates an us versus them mentality, where our own actions are justified by circumstance, while their actions are a result of their character. This can lead to unnecessary conflict and judgment, whether it's with a colleague who misses a deadline, a family member who seems distant, or a stranger who behaves rudely. To overcome this illusion, we must practice a simple exercise. When someone does something that frustrates you, pause and ask, what are the 3 most plausible situational reasons for their behavior? This simple act of putting yourself in their shoes can completely change your perspective and foster a more compassionate worldview. Cognitive dissonance. Finally, let's explore a deeply uncomfortable and often unseen illusion: cognitive dissonance. This is the mental stress or discomfort experienced by a person who holds 2 or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values at the same time. The illusion isn't that we have these conflicting ideas, it's that our mind will do everything in its power to resolve the conflict, often without us even realizing it, by bending our reality to fit our beliefs. The theory was first proposed by psychologist Leon Festinger in the 1950s. The classic example is a person who smokes. They hold 2 conflicting ideas: I am a rational person who wants to be healthy, and I smoke cigarettes, which I know are unhealthy. This creates psychological tension. To resolve this uncomfortable dissonance, they won't necessarily quit smoking. Instead, they might rationalize their behavior by saying, my grandfather smoked his whole life and lived to be 90, so it's not that bad, or, I'm under a lot of stress, and smoking helps me cope, so the health benefits of stress reduction outweigh the risks. They are not giving up their belief that smoking is bad for them, but they are bending their reality to make their behavior consistent with their belief. This psychological dance can be seen in political beliefs, relationship choices, and consumer behavior. We might buy an expensive car and then, to avoid the discomfort of buyer's remorse, we will find every reason to justify the purchase, highlighting its positive features and dismissing any negative reviews. We are not being rational, we are just protecting our comfort. The danger of cognitive dissonance is that it can prevent us from acknowledging truth and from growing. When faced with evidence that contradicts a deeply held belief, our minds don't just accept the evidence. We might reject the evidence, question the source, or rationalize the situation to protect our worldview. To overcome this, we must have the courage to sit with our discomfort, to acknowledge the tension between our beliefs and our actions, and to be open to changing our minds, even when it's painful. Plato's cave, the Dunning-Kruger effect, the placebo effect, rejection sensitivity, the false consensus effect, confirmation bias, the sunk cost fallacy, the halo effect, the fundamental attribution error, and cognitive dissonance are all illusions that hold us captive. But the moment we recognize them for what they are, shadows, biases, or fears, we take the first step toward freedom. We gain the power to turn away from the wall, step into the light, and begin to see the world, and ourselves, with a renewed sense of clarity and truth. The battle for free will. Now we arrive at one of the oldest and most enduring debates in philosophy, one that lies at the very heart of our sense of self and our place in the universe: free will versus determinism. Do we truly have the freedom to choose our own path, or are we simply actors in a cosmic play, following a script that was written long before we were born? Determinism is the belief that all events, including human actions, are ultimately determined by prior causes. In its simplest form, it says that everything that has ever happened and everything that will ever happen is an inevitable consequence of the laws of physics and the state of the universe at the moment of the Big Bang. Think of it like a chain of dominoes. If you know the exact position of every domino at the start, you can, in principle, predict the outcome of every single one falling. From this perspective, every thought you think, every word you speak, and every choice you make is just another domino in an infinitely long line. The arguments for determinism are compelling. From a scientific standpoint, our brains are physical objects governed by physical laws. Our thoughts are a product of neural activity, which is a product of electrical and chemical signals. These signals are subject to the same laws of cause and effect as a falling rock or a spinning planet. Furthermore, our lives are shaped by factors we have no control over: our genes, our upbringing, our environment, and the random events of the world. Are we truly free when so much of our life is a result of these uncontrollable forces? This is where the idea of free will enters the picture. Free will is the belief that, at any given moment, we have the ability to make a genuine choice between two or more different courses of action. It's the feeling you have when you decide to wake up early or sleep in, to order coffee or tea, to be kind to a stranger or to ignore them. We feel like we are the authors of our own lives. But if determinism is true, this feeling is a powerful illusion. Your decision to order coffee was not a choice you freely made, it was the inevitable result of a complex web of neural activity, past experiences, and genetic predispositions. This raises some deeply unsettling questions. If we don't have free will, can we be held morally responsible for our actions? Is a criminal truly at fault for their crime if their actions were predetermined? Does it even make sense to praise a hero if their heroic act was a foregone conclusion? This debate is not just a philosophical parlor game, it has profound implications for how we view ourselves and our society. If we believe in free will, it gives us a sense of agency, purpose, and responsibility. It provides the foundation for our legal systems and our moral judgments. If we believe in determinism, it can lead to a more compassionate view of humanity, understanding that we are all products of our circumstances. It can also, for some, lead to a sense of nihilism or a feeling that our efforts are ultimately meaningless. Many philosophers and scientists today are searching for a middle ground, a concept known as compatibilism. This view suggests that free will and determinism are not mutually exclusive. They argue that free will is the ability to act according to one's own motivations, desires, and reasons. As long as our choices are not coerced by outside forces, we are free, even if those motivations and desires are themselves determined. For a compatibilist, a person who chooses to go to the gym because they want to be healthy is exercising free will, even if their desire for health was determined by their upbringing and biology. They are not acting under duress, they are acting on their own internal desires. The debate remains open, and there may never be a definitive answer. But the value of the question is not in the answer itself, but in the self-reflection it inspires. It forces us to examine our assumptions about choice, responsibility, and the forces that shape us. It prompts us to contemplate the hidden factors influencing our choices, be it societal pressures, subconscious biases, or the enduring power of habit. The next time you make a choice, big or small, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I acting on a genuine desire, or am I on autopilot? What are the forces, seen and unseen, that led me to this moment? This simple act of reflection is itself an exercise in freedom. It is the moment we step back from the domino line and choose to become the conscious observer, if not the ultimate architect, of our own lives. Practical tools for navigating reality. Now that we've explored the most mind-bending questions about identity, perception, and choice, let's bring it all back down to earth. These profound ideas, these tools are not just for the academic elite, they serve as a toolkit for building a better, more intentional life. In this final section, we'll turn abstract philosophical and psychological concepts into concrete, actionable strategies for self-improvement. The power of habit stacking. First, let's talk about a powerful tool for building new routines, the power of habit stacking. This concept, popularized by author James Clear, is a brilliant workaround for our brain's natural resistance to change. Instead of trying to force a new habit into your life, you simply link it to an existing one. The basic formula for this method is, after completing current habit, I will begin new habit. Think about the sheer number of routines you already have: brushing your teeth, making coffee, getting in the car, or sitting down to watch a show. These are all opportunities. For example, if you want to start meditating, you could decide, after I drink my morning coffee, I will meditate for 5 minutes. Or if you want to read more, you could say, after I get into bed, I will read 1 chapter of a book. The magic of habit stacking is that it leverages the momentum of an existing routine. Your brain already has a neural pathway for your current habit, and you are simply piggybacking a new behavior onto it. It removes the need for willpower and makes the new action feel like a natural extension of something you already do. This is the practical application of the Sorites paradox in action. You are adding one small grain of a new habit at a time, and before you know it, you have a heap of positive behaviors. The psychology of procrastination. Next, let's tackle one of the most common and frustrating challenges we face: procrastination. We often see procrastination as a character flaw or a sign of laziness, but in reality, it's a deeply psychological phenomenon. We don't procrastinate because we're lazy, we procrastinate because we are trying to manage our negative emotions. When we face a task, our brain anticipates the discomfort it might bring: boredom, anxiety, frustration, or fear of failure. To avoid these feelings, our brain offers a temporary reward: scrolling through social media, watching a video, or doing a simple, less daunting task instead. Procrastination is not a time management problem, it's an emotion regulation problem. The key to overcoming it is not to beat yourself up, but to get curious. The next time you feel the urge to procrastinate, pause and ask yourself, what emotion am I avoiding right now? By identifying the root cause, you can address the emotion directly instead of just fighting the behavior. The Dunning-Kruger effect teaches us to be humble about what we know, and the psychology of procrastination teaches us to be compassionate with what we feel. A simple and powerful tool to combat this is the Pomodoro technique: work in focused, 25-minute sprints followed by a 5-minute break. This breaks down a daunting task into manageable chunks, making the emotional barrier to starting much lower. The art of saying no. Our last tool is perhaps the most difficult and the most liberating: the art of saying no. We are often conditioned to say yes to requests, commitments, and invitations, even when we don't have the time or energy. We do it to avoid conflict, to be a good person, or because we fear disappointing others. This is where the wisdom of the placebo effect and rejection sensitivity come into play. Our fear of rejection often makes us say yes when we should say no. We are afraid that if we don't agree to a request, we will be disliked or seen as uncaring. But this is the shadow of rejection sensitivity playing tricks on us. The truth is, people who respect your boundaries will respect your no. And those who don't respect your no are not respecting you. Learning to say no is not a selfish act, it is an act of self-preservation and self-respect. It is an acknowledgement that your time, energy, and mental health are finite resources that you must protect. It is the moment when you decide to cease being a yes man and begin cultivating intentionality. The most effective way to say no is with kindness and clarity, without making up elaborate excuses. A simple, honest response like, "Thank you so much for thinking of me, but I'm unable to take on any new commitments right now," is often all that's needed. This is the ultimate form of philosophical living, the act of consciously choosing your own path, guided by your values, and not by the expectations of others. The power of philosophical living. We began this journey by asking some of the most fundamental questions about our existence, from the nature of our identity to the freedom of our choices. We've explored how our minds can be a source of illusion, and how our language can create paradoxes. But we've also discovered that these are not just abstract ideas, they are a toolkit for living. The ship of Theseus teaches us that identity is not a destination, but a beautiful, ongoing voyage. The paradox of the Sorites reminds us that the most significant changes in our lives are often the result of countless tiny, almost invisible steps. Plato's allegory of the cave, the Dunning-Kruger effect, the placebo effect, and rejection sensitivity all show us that our minds can create powerful illusions, and that the first step to freedom is to recognize them. And finally, the debate between free will and determinism encourages us to be more mindful of every choice we make, to be the conscious observers of our own lives. These ideas are not meant to be a map with a single destination, but rather a compass to help you navigate the complexities of your own reality. By questioning the unseen threads of our lives, we gain the power to weave a story that is more intentional, more compassionate, and more profound. So, as you go forward, keep questioning. Keep learning. Keep looking for the truths that lie just beyond the shadows on the wall. The universe of ideas is infinite, and your journey of discovery has only just begun. Thank you for watching, for thinking, and for being here. If this video resonated with you, let me know in the comments what topic you'd love for us to explore next. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.